The rhythmic, almost hypnotic squeak of a mop across the gleaming, highly polished marble floors of the Viridia Gallery of Fine Arts was, for anyone who truly paid attention, as intrinsic to the institution's very being as the hushed whispers of its patrons or the faint, almost antiseptic scent of disinfectant that perpetually clung to the air. This was the domain of Ethan Vance, an elderly man, likely in his late 60s, perhaps even early 70s, whose quiet, unassuming presence rendered him virtually invisible. He was the gallery's janitor, a silent, humble fixture in his worn, practical overalls and scuffed work boots, a figure so ingrained in the daily backdrop that most visitors and even a good number of the staff barely registered his existence. To them, he was merely a necessary utility, an extension of the cleaning equipment he operated with such diligent precision. Yet, despite this pervasive invisibility, Ethan's work was anything but cursory. Each swipe of his mop, each pass of his duster, was executed with a meticulousness that bordered on the reverent. He didn't just clean, he cared. He meticulously wiped down every pedestal, as if sensing the silent weight of the masterpieces they bore. He dusted every ornate frame, his calloused fingers tracing the delicate carvings, with a gentleness that bespoke a profound appreciation for the craftsmanship. He polished every glass display case until it gleamed with an almost liquid clarity, ensuring that nothing obscured the viewer's gaze from the precious artifacts within. From ancient Roman busts to vibrant contemporary canvases, each piece of art, regardless of its era or value, received the same unwavering, almost devotional attention from Ethan. He moved through the grand halls like a silent guardian, a solitary figure whose quiet dedication belied the monumental task of maintaining such a vast and valuable collection. The gallery itself, a towering edifice of marble and glass, was a microcosm of Viridia's elite. It was a place where wealth converged with culture, where art was not merely appreciated, but often seen as a shrewd investment, a symbol of elevated status. And at its apex was Julian Thorne, the gallery's director, a man in his 50s whose very presence exuded an aura of cultured arrogance. His tailored suits, always impeccably cut from the finest fabrics, seemed to be woven from the very cloth of his self-importance. His pronouncements on art, delivered with a sonorous voice and an air of unassailable authority, were treated as gospel by his sycophantic circle of critics and wealthy patrons. Thorne saw himself not just as a curator, but as a gatekeeper, a tastemaker, whose discerning eye dictated what was in and what was out, what was deemed genius and what was relegated to the dustbin of obscurity. To Thorne, art was primarily a commodity, a means to an end, profit, prestige, and the expansion of his own considerable influence. He championed established artists, names that commanded staggering prices at auction and bolstered the galleries, and his own, financial coffers. He openly dismissed anything that dared to challenge his narrow, conventional definition of artistic merit, anything too raw, too unconventional, too unrefined for his polished sensibilities. He viewed true creativity as something that could only emerge from the hallowed halls of renowned art academies, from artists with carefully curated pedigrees and an understanding of commercial appeal. Unfettered, raw talent, especially that which emerged from unexpected places, was met with disdain, seen as a threat to the carefully controlled market he so diligently manipulated. His interactions with Ethan were always brief, always dismissive. "Mind the drips, Vance. These floors cost more than your annual salary," he'd say with a wave of his hand, a condescending remark tossed casually over his shoulder as he strode past, his attention already elsewhere. Or, "Try not to breathe too heavily near the Rothko, Vance. Some of our collectors believe even air quality affects its value." Ethan would simply nod, his placid eyes betraying nothing of the quiet dignity within, and continue his work, a silent testament to unwavering endurance, a master of his domain, however humble. He had long ago learned that engaging with Thorne was futile, like trying to reason with a brick wall adorned with a designer tie. He had found solace in the quiet rhythm of his tasks, in the palpable presence of the art itself, which, unlike Thorne, seemed to speak to him without judgment. One particularly ordinary afternoon, as Ethan was meticulously cleaning the polished pedestal beneath a famously controversial contemporary sculpture, a sprawling, twisted mass of bronze entitled Urban Anguish, A small, unassuming piece of paper slipped unnoticed from the worn pocket of his overalls. It fluttered silently to the pristine marble floor, coming to rest near his scuffed work boot. No one else in the hushed gallery seemed to notice. Their gazes were fixed on the imposing sculpture, or perhaps on their smartphones. It was a small, crudely drawn sketch, rendered in charcoal, of the very sculpture he was cleaning. But within its rough, unpolished lines lay a subtle, yet profoundly insightful twist. Ethan had sketched urban anguish not merely as a representation of despair, but with an almost imperceptible hint of a bird taking tentative flight from its very core, its wings just beginning to unfurl from the tangled mass. It subtly transformed the sculpture's meaning from one of pure, suffocating despair to a defiant, fragile hope, a testament to the human spirit's ability to find liberation even within its deepest struggles. It was a perspective that hinted at a much deeper understanding, a profound empathy for the artist's original intent, perhaps even a reinterpretation that improved upon it. Ethan quickly bent, his movements fluid despite his age, and snatched the sketch from the floor. His gaze darted around the cavernous hall, a quick, almost paranoid sweep, ensuring that no one had witnessed the fall, no one had caught a glimpse of his secret. A fleeting flicker of something intense, a burning passion, a glimpse into a hidden, vibrant inner world, crossed his usually placid eyes before he deftly crumpled the paper slightly and shoved it back deep into his pocket, tucking it away as if it were a forbidden treasure. The gallery hummed with its usual quiet energy, oblivious to the small, profound secret that had just brushed its hallowed floors. Moments later, the quiet reverence of the gallery was momentarily broken by a small but increasingly frantic commotion near the vivid, color-filled exhibition. A young mother, her face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and rising panic, was attempting to discreetly scold her child. The child, a curious toddler with bright, inquisitive eyes, had been captivated by a vibrant, abstract painting nearby, its explosion of red and blue a magnet for innocent fingers. In a moment of childish exuberance, the toddler had accidentally smeared a bright red crayon mark, thick and defiant, across its ornate, gilded frame. The mother desperately tried to rub it off with her sleeve, only succeeding in smearing the waxy mark further, making the situation worse. Ethan, his movements almost preternatural in their stillness and silent efficiency, noticed the escalating distress. He moved calmly, without haste or alarm, towards the scene. From a specialized compartment in his utility belt, he produced a small, almost microscopic, cleaning cloth, the kind used for delicate, sensitive surfaces, a tool known only to conservators and restoration experts. Gently, with the practiced hand of someone who understood both the fragility of art and the innocence of childhood, he dabbed at the crayon mark. He worked meticulously, his fingers precise, lifting the waxy pigment without marring the antique gold leaf beneath. All the while he offered the child a small, kind smile, a silent gesture of understanding and reassurance that seemed to calm both the child and the distraught mother. Before the parent could properly thank him, before anyone could truly register his presence or his expert intervention, Ethan had already melted back into the shadows of the gallery, preferring to remain unnoticed, a ghost among the masterpieces. His quiet act of care a stark contrast to the gallery's cold elitism. He simply vanished, leaving behind only the faintest scent of clean linen and the lingering impression of quiet competence. As he swiftly cleaned the mark, a faint, almost imperceptible scar was briefly visible on his left wrist, peeking from beneath his rolled-up sleeve. It was small, no bigger than a thumbnail, its intricate design a subtle contrast to the roughness of his working hands. The scar was shaped like a tiny, stylized Celtic knot, its continuous, interwoven lines hinting at eternity and interconnectedness. He quickly pulled his sleeve down to cover it, as if guarding a profound secret, a hidden part of his very being. The scar carried a faint, almost unnoticeable warmth, a subtle thrum against his skin that often signaled a moment of profound clarity, intense emotion, or an impending shift in his carefully maintained anonymity. It whispered of a past he meticulously hid, a connection to origins unknown to the bustling gallery, hinting at a profound, nearly fated link to a lost heritage or a critical decision point in his life. It was a silent, living testament to a story untold, a life far richer and more complex than the humble janitor's uniform suggested. It was a fragment of a forgotten world, a key to a mastery he had long suppressed, and a quiet promise that his time for unveiling would soon come. The quiet, almost reverent hum of the Viridia Gallery of Fine Arts, a sound usually comforting in its predictability, often served as an elaborate facade, masking a deeper, more turbulent current of anxieties and corporate machinations. For Julian Thorne, the gallery's director, those hidden currents were rapidly escalating into a full-blown tempest, threatening to capsize his carefully constructed vessel of prestige and profit. Despite his outward displays of cultured arrogance, his meticulously curated image as a connoisseur of high art, and his relentless, almost rapacious pursuit of commercial success, Thorne was acutely aware of the shifting tides in the art world. He understood, perhaps more keenly than he let on, that his position, his very identity, was inextricably linked to the gallery's soaring valuation and its undisputed status as a cultural arbiter. A series of recent acquisitions, highly touted by Thorne himself in glossy brochures and exclusive press releases, had inexplicably failed to ignite the market. Pieces he had confidently predicted would become cornerstones of burgeoning private collections now sat in storage, their investment potential stagnant. Attendance figures, while still respectable enough to avoid immediate alarm, weren't soaring as they once had. The vibrant energy that once characterized the gallery's grand openings had subtly dulled into a more sedate, almost polite interest. Whispers, like subtle static on a secure, albeit compromised line, had begun to circulate among his elite circle of critics, wealthy collectors, and influential investors. These murmurs hinted at a growing stagnation, a predictable blandness, an almost palpable lack of genuine inspiration in the gallery's collection, despite its often astronomical price tags. "Thorne's getting predictable," one whispered. "One. All flash, no soul," another chimed in, barely audible over the clinking of champagne flutes at an exclusive gala. Thorne, for all his bluster and theatrical confidence, was fundamentally insecure, his ego a fragile edifice perched precariously on the shifting sands of public opinion and market trends. He dismissed these concerns publicly with dismissive waves of his hand and condescending chuckles, attributing them to the fickle nature of artistic trends, or uninformed opinion. But privately, the gnawing fear of losing his coveted position, of seeing his meticulously crafted reputation as a visionary director crumble, began to take deep, insidious root. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that if the gallery's image continued to stagnate, if its financial performance faltered even slightly, his career, his very identity, would follow suit, plummeting into the abyss of obscurity he so desperately sought to avoid. The pressure mounted, building a suffocating weight on his shoulders that even his expensive suits couldn't conceal. Adding significantly to Thorne's mounting unease was a new, unsettling development: the quiet but remarkably persistent presence of a mysterious entity known only as the Artisan Collective. This group, operating with extreme discretion and shrouded in an almost impenetrable veil of anonymity, had begun to make significant waves in the underground art scene, not with flashy auctions or celebrity endorsements, but with raw, undeniable talent. They sponsored unconventional exhibitions in unexpected pop-up spaces, abandoned warehouses, renovated storefronts in forgotten districts, even impromptu displays in public parks. They championed emerging artists who dared to defy mainstream conventions, whose work pulsed with an authenticity that mocked the polished sterility of established galleries. Their events, often announced through cryptic social media posts and word of mouth, garnered significant buzz among a younger, more avant-garde demographic, drawing crowds that genuinely sought connection and meaning in art, not just investment opportunities. The Artisan Collective's ethos, that true art was about raw expression, human connection, boundless creativity, and the innate human spirit rather than commercial value, established names, or curated pedigrees, was a direct ideological affront to everything Thorne believed in, everything he had built his career upon. He publicly dismissed them as amateurs, pretenders, naive idealists, or a fleeting trend for the uninitiated. Yet, their growing influence, their uncanny ability to capture the public imagination without the traditional trappings of wealth and prestige, felt like a subtle, insidious threat to his carefully constructed empire. They represented an artistic rebellion, a dangerous, unpredictable force capable of disrupting the very market he so meticulously controlled, a market predicated on exclusivity and the manufactured scarcity of valuable art. The mere mention of their name sent a ripple of unease through Thorne's inner circle, a testament to their unsettling power. Meanwhile, Ethan Vance, the unassuming janitor, continued his meticulous nightly work, a silent, almost spectral observer of the gallery's internal machinations and external pressures. His mop still squeaked its rhythmic tune, his bucket still rattled softly as he traversed the silent halls, but his eyes, behind their placid, unassuming facade, were sharper, more perceptive than ever. He noticed Thorne's increasingly agitated pacing during the day, the strained, hushed phone calls from behind closed office doors, the forced, brittle smiles he offered to potential investors whose skepticism was increasingly difficult to mask. Ethan absorbed it all, the subtle shifts in body language, the unspoken tensions between staff, the minute details that painted a comprehensive picture of a gallery in quiet crisis, a veneer of opulence barely concealing a core of vulnerability. He understood the unspoken language of power and vulnerability, a skill honed not in gilded boardrooms, but in far more dangerous, unforgiving environments where keen observation was often the difference between life and death. He recognized the scent of fear, however faintly disguised, and it clung to Thorne like a second skin. During his nightly rounds, long after the last patron had departed, after the final security guard had settled into their predictable routine, Ethan found himself irresistibly drawn to the gallery's most recent and arguably most expensive acquisition, a monumental abstract painting by the celebrated but increasingly predictable artist, Madame Dubois. The vast canvas, a swirl of muted grays and browns, was meant to evoke profound introspection, a somber meditation on the human condition. But to Ethan it felt hollow, lifeless, a grand gesture devoid of genuine emotion. It was, in his discerning eyes, a monument to commercialism, a stark, almost insulting contrast to the vibrant, soulful art that lived and breathed in his own fertile imagination. He would stop there, in the vast, echoing hall, the low hum of the ventilation system the only sound for miles around, and pull out his worn, leather-bound sketchbook. In the dim, ambient light of the gallery's security lamps, with nothing but a stick of charcoal or a simple pencil, he would begin to draw. He didn't copy Madame Dubois' painting. He responded to it. His sketches were raw, emotional, transforming the original's blandness into something vivid, vibrant, teeming with untold stories. He sketched sweeping landscapes that hinted at forgotten myths, steeped in the melancholic beauty of ancient lands. He drew portraits that captured the silent anguish of a lost generation, their eyes conveying untold depths of suffering and resilience. He created abstract forms that pulsed with an almost spiritual energy, vibrant colors, and dynamic lines that defied the static nature of the painting before him. Each stroke of charcoal or pencil was an act of quiet defiance, a visceral, unacknowledged declaration of his own profound artistic prowess, a rebellion against the commercialism he witnessed daily. His creations were infused with a life that Madame Dubois' work utterly lacked, breathing soul into the lifeless canvas. As he sketched, utterly absorbed in the creative flow, the faint, almost imperceptible scar on his left wrist, shaped like a tiny, stylized Celtic knot, would begin to hum. It was a low, steady thrum, a subtle yet insistent warmth that pulsed with each deliberate stroke of his pencil, an almost symbiotic connection between his hidden art and his mysterious past. It wasn't painful, but rather a profound, grounding sensation. This scar, he knew, was more than just a mark left by an old injury. It was a remnant of a forgotten accident from his youth, a fall during an archaeological dig in a remote, ancient village known for its master artisans and their secretive, almost mystical techniques. He dimly remembered a community of artists, not recognized by the mainstream art world, who believed that true art was an innate, spiritual connection, a profound dialogue with the universe itself, a gift passed down through generations, often marked by a unique symbol etched onto the skin. This scar, etched onto his own wrist, felt like a constant whisper of that lost heritage, a silent promise of an artistic destiny he had buried under layers of dust, disinfectant, and decades of meticulous anonymity. It was a secret language between his mysterious past and his unassuming present, urging him towards a future he hadn't yet dared to imagine, a profound legacy awaiting its rightful heir. One particular night, as Ethan was deeply immersed in a particularly intricate sketch, his mind lost in the ebb and flow of charcoal on paper, he heard a faint, almost imperceptible click. It was a mechanical sound, sharp and precise, alien to the gallery's usual nightly quietude. His head snapped up, his senses, honed by years of keen observation, instantly alert. In the far corner of the main hall, almost completely hidden by the imposing shadow of a large neoclassical sculpture, was a tiny red light. It blinked once, twice, then settled into a steady, unblinking glow, like a silent, predatory eye. It was a hidden camera. A jolt, sharp and sudden, ran through Ethan. He hadn't noticed it before. He had probably cleaned right past it 100 times, his focus always on the dust, the smudges, the physical integrity of the art. Thorne, he knew, had been increasingly paranoid about security, about protecting his valuable assets, about mitigating the threat of the artisan collective. The camera, small and innocuous, almost imperceptible against the ornate wall paneling, was clearly a new addition, a silent, unblinking eye observing the gallery's sanctity, or perhaps its secrets. It was designed to catch intruders, to monitor, to control. Ethan froze, his hand still hovering over his sketch, the charcoal poised mid-stroke. A cold dread, a familiar companion from a different life, seeped into him. He had been observed. All his secret moments, his hidden artistic passion, the true essence of his defiance, his private rebellion against Thorne's sterile world, it had all been captured. The implications were terrifying. He could be fired, publicly humiliated, exposed as a fraud, a delusional old man caught sketching in the shadows. The quiet anonymity that had protected him for so long, that had allowed his secret artistic life to flourish, was shattered. The thought of losing this sanctuary, however humble, was a painful prospect. But then, as he stared at the tiny red light, a different emotion, slow and simmering, began to rise within him, pushing back against the fear. It wasn't panic, but a quiet, burning resolve, a righteous indignation that had simmered for decades. This was his point of no return. He would no longer be just the unseen janitor, a silent shadow cleaning up after others. The camera, meant to expose his vulnerability, to solidify his insignificance, might just become the key to unveiling his truth. He felt the insistent warmth of his Celtic knot scar, a silent whisper of an ancient power reawakening. The surveillance meant to trap him would ironically be his ultimate liberation. He would turn the lens back on them, exposing not just his art, but the hypocrisy of a system that valued surface over soul. The days following the chilling discovery of the hidden camera transformed the familiar rhythms of the Viridia Gallery for Ethan Vance. What had once been a comforting routine of quiet diligence now felt like a meticulously choreographed performance, every squeak of his mop, every swipe of his cloth potentially under scrutiny. The small, unblinking red eye of the surveillance lens, discreetly nestled near Thorne's most prized and expensive acquisitions, was a constant, unsettling presence. Ethan, however, was no stranger to surveillance. His past, shrouded in the whispers of forgotten artistry and perhaps something far more clandestine, had taught him the nuanced language of observation and counter-observation. He had lived in the shadows for decades, but now the shadows themselves seemed to hold a new, treacherous light. He maintained his placid demeanor, his movements as unhurried and precise as ever. Yet beneath the calm exterior, his mind churned with a quiet intensity. He meticulously observed Thorne. The director's anxieties, once merely a subtle hum, had escalated into a palpable tremor that vibrated through the gallery's upper echelons. Thorne's forced smiles grew thinner, his pronouncements on art more brittle, his cane tapping an increasingly frantic rhythm on the marble floors. The stagnation he publicly denied was becoming undeniably evident. Key investors, often seen whispering conspiratorially in hushed corners, now seemed to avoid Thorne's gaze, their interest in the gallery's offerings waning as rapidly as their confidence in its director. Thorne's desperation, masked by escalating displays of arrogance, was a telltale sign of his loosening grip on the reins of power. He initiated new, aggressively conventional exhibitions, trying to placate his disgruntled patrons with familiar, commercially safe art, inadvertently exacerbating the very blandness that was driving away the discerning connoisseurs. Adding fuel to Thorne's growing paranoia was the escalating success of the Artisan Collective. Their unconventional exhibitions, often held in stark, unexpected venues across Viridia, were no longer merely making waves. They were drawing tidal surges of attendees. Their guerrilla marketing tactics, vibrant street art appearing overnight, cryptic QR codes spray-painted on forgotten walls, flash mobs performing artistic interpretations in public squares, were proving remarkably effective. The public, starved for authenticity, flocked to their shows, finding genuine connection in the raw, unpolished brilliance of the emerging artists they championed. The collective's manifesto, disseminated through underground zines and viral social media posts, celebrated art as a universal human expression, a force for connection and social commentary, directly refuting Thorne's commercialized exclusive vision. This direct challenge to his authority, combined with the mysterious anonymity of the collective's leadership, fueled Thorne's obsession. He viewed them as an existential threat, a cancer on the true art world, and he initiated a quiet, unofficial investigation, pulling strings within his extensive network to discredit or even dismantle them. Ethan, however, saw beyond Thorne's petty anxieties. He saw the camera not as a threat to his privacy, but as a potential conduit for his truth. He recognized the camera's limited field of vision, its fixed angle, its predictable blind spots. He began to plan. During his nightly cleaning rounds, as the last guard completed their final circuit and the gallery sank into its profound, echoing silence, Ethan began to perform. His performances were subtle at first, almost imperceptible. He would position his cleaning cart just so, blocking a strategic corner of the frame. He would spend exaggerated amounts of time dusting a particular sculpture, his body artfully obscuring the camera's view of an adjacent wall. He studied the camera's light sensitivity, its recording patterns, its limitations. He discovered that the camera activated primarily through motion sensors during the deep quiet of the night, recording short, segmented clips. This fragmented recording style, designed to save data, would be his canvas. Then, he began to integrate his clandestine artistry into his nightly routine, turning the act of janitorial work into a profound, deliberate performance. He chose the large, pristine wall directly opposite the hidden camera's primary vantage point, a blank, imposing canvas that Thorne often used to display his most expensive, and to Ethan, most soulless, acquisitions. Working meticulously during the hours he knew the camera was recording, sometimes in bursts, sometimes in long, drawn-out sequences, Ethan began his masterpiece. He started by using the very tools of his trade. With the precision of a seasoned artist, he would subtly manipulate dust, light, and even the faint sheen of cleaning solutions to create ephemeral, almost ghostly patterns on the wall. He used his mop as a giant brush, swirling residual moisture into transient landscapes. He meticulously arranged discarded cleaning rags into intricate symbolic forms, transforming refuse into temporary art. These were fleeting works, designed to exist only for the camera's unblinking eye, and then to be wiped away before dawn. He would then, as if by accident, drop a small piece of charcoal or a discarded artist's pencil near his creation, hinting at human intervention. He varied his techniques, sometimes working quickly and impulsively, sometimes with agonizing, deliberate slowness, testing the camera's ability to capture nuance. As he worked, a profound connection formed between him and the art he was creating. The rhythmic motion of his hands, the focused intensity in his eyes, mirrored the actions of the very masters whose works hung on the gallery walls. He channeled decades of suppressed creativity, pouring his soul into these temporary installations. The faint, almost imperceptible Celtic knot scar on his left wrist would glow with a persistent, comforting warmth, its intricate design seemingly pulsing with the ebb and flow of his artistic energy. It felt less like a scar and more like a conduit, a direct link to the forgotten artists of his heritage, a silent confirmation that he was fulfilling a deeper purpose. He was no longer just drawing on paper. He was drawing with light, with shadow, with the very essence of the gallery itself. His focus intensified. He began to introduce more complex elements. One night, he carefully propped a discarded, broken antique mirror against the wall, positioning it to capture fragmented, distorted reflections of the gallery's most revered classical sculptures. He then used his cleaning cloths to frame these reflections, creating new, unsettling perspectives that challenged the viewer's perception of beauty and perfection. Another night, he arranged a cascade of dried leaves meticulously collected from the gallery's outdoor garden onto the floor, mimicking the flow of a river, then used his industrial floor polisher to create a gleaming reflection of the imagined water, illuminated by the distant security lights. Each piece was a quiet, profound commentary on the nature of art, illusion, and the hidden beauty in the mundane. He also started leaving very subtle, almost imperceptible Easter eggs within his temporary creations, small symbols or motifs that only a very keen, art-savvy eye might catch. These included minimalist interpretations of the Celtic knot from his scar, hidden within the lines of a dust pattern, or a sequence of numbers that hinted at an ancient artistic ratio known only to a select few. He wanted to ensure that when his work was eventually discovered, it would not be dismissed as random vandalism, but recognized as a deliberate, thoughtful, and profoundly artistic statement. He knew the risk was immense. He could be caught, arrested, or worse, dismissed and shamed, losing the last vestige of his dignity. But the burning desire to be seen, to have his art speak, outweighed all fear. He was painting not for recognition from Thorne, but for the elusive, unseen audience he felt drawn to, the artisan collective, whose philosophy resonated so deeply with his own. Ethan's confidence grew with each passing night. He began to directly engage with the gallery's collection through his hidden art. One night, he created a large, luminous frame on the wall using reflective cleaning wax, then positioned it perfectly to capture the reflection of a small, forgotten portrait of an unknown artist hanging in a dimly lit corridor. He then placed a single, vibrant red rose, which he had discreetly brought from his meager apartment, carefully nurtured, on the floor beneath the reflection, a silent tribute to unrecognized talent. The contrast between the forgotten artist, illuminated by the janitor's hidden work, and the opulent yet lifeless Madame Dubois painting, was stark, a powerful statement on the true source of art. He even began to incorporate sound. While cleaning, he would hum ancient, almost forgotten folk tunes, passed down through generations in the obscure artistic community connected to his scar, ensuring the camera's audio pickup would capture these haunting melodies. He carefully modulated his voice, turning the mundane hum into a subtle, melancholic performance. These weren't random acts, they were calculated, deliberate strokes in a grand, unseen performance, a rebellion against the sterility of the gallery, a testament to the vibrant, hidden life of an artist who refused to be invisible. Meanwhile, Thorne's paranoia reached a fever pitch. He had reviewed the security footage from the newly installed cameras, hoping to catch a pilfering employee or a rogue artist. What he saw, at first, confused him. Brief, fragmented clips of Ethan, the old janitor, moving in strange, almost ritualistic ways. Then, fleeting glimpses of bizarre patterns on the walls, impossible configurations of light and shadow, arrangements of mundane objects that seemed to shift and disappear. He dismissed them as glitches, optical illusions, or the ramblings of an overactive imagination, perhaps even the effects of his own mounting stress. "Just old Vance puttering about," he muttered, dismissing the clips with a wave of his hand, attributing the oddities to faulty equipment or his own exhaustion. He was so consumed by his artisan collective obsession and so dismissive of Ethan that he couldn't conceive of the true artistry unfolding right under his nose. He focused his surveillance efforts elsewhere, convinced that the real threat lay outside his walls, not within them. This blindness, fueled by his pride and prejudice, would be his undoing. He continued to watch the cameras, but his gaze was always searching for external threats, for evidence of the amateurs he so despised. He saw only what he expected to see, an old janitor doing his job. He never truly looked at what was actually being created. And every night, as the cameras recorded their fragmented glimpses, Ethan Vance continued to paint his masterpiece on the invisible canvas of surveillance, the Celtic knot on his wrist burning with a quiet, potent energy, a testament to the power of the unseen and the imminent unraveling of Thorne's carefully constructed world. The stage was set for a revelation that would shake Viridia's art scene to its very core, transforming a humble janitor into an artistic legend, and exposing the true blindness of those who claimed to see everything. The morning arrived with an ominous, almost suffocating hush over the Viridia Gallery of Fine Arts. A palpable tension, thick as the dust Ethan swept, hung in the air. For weeks, Julian Thorne had been consumed by a frantic energy, a man teetering on the precipice of losing everything. The whispers about the gallery's stagnation had amplified into outright murmurs of doubt among his board members. The Artisan Collective, far from being discredited, had only grown bolder, their latest pop-up exhibition in an abandoned train station drawing record crowds and unprecedented critical acclaim, eclipsing anything the Viridia Gallery had produced in years. Thorne's paranoia had peaked. He felt eyes on him from every direction, unseen forces conspiring against his reign. He had doubled down on surveillance, adding more discreet cameras, convinced that some external enemy, some amateur saboteur, was undermining him. His ego, once a formidable fortress, was now a crumbling edifice, riddled with the cracks of insecurity and desperation. He was a predator cornered, lashing out blindly. This particular morning was designated for a highly anticipated yet utterly nerve-wracking board meeting. It wasn't just any meeting, it was a crisis summit. Key investors, skeptical critics, and a handful of influential art historians had been summoned, their faces grim, their posture rigid. The agenda, delivered with Thorne's characteristic, if now desperate flourish, vaguely promised a strategic presentation addressing recent market challenges and unveiling new initiatives to reassert Viridia Gallery's dominance. Thorne intended to unveil a new, ludicrously expensive acquisition, a collection of dull, albeit historically significant European landscapes, and present a grandiose, completely fabricated plan for a global expansion. He believed that sheer audacity, backed by historical precedent and overwhelming opulence, could still sway opinion. He clung to the delusion that his charm and power alone could obscure the glaring deficiencies in his leadership and the gallery's increasingly stale collection. He had prepared for hours, practicing his dismissive tone, perfecting his condescending smiles. Meanwhile, Ethan Vance proceeded with his morning routine as he always did. His movements quiet, deliberate, almost invisible. He swept, he polished. He prepared the gallery for the day, for the meeting, for the inevitable reckoning. The faint, steady warmth emanating from the Celtic knot scar on his left wrist was more pronounced than usual, a gentle but insistent thrum, a silent chorus of anticipation. It pulsed with a profound energy, an almost mystical reassurance that the time was now, that his hidden heritage, his suppressed artistry, was finally poised to break free. He felt a quiet excitement building within him, a sense of destiny unfolding. He was no longer just the janitor, he was the orchestrator, the artist, the catalyst. He knew that the hidden camera, that tiny red eye that had observed his clandestine creations, held the key to his vindication, and to Thorne's ultimate downfall. The board meeting convened in the gallery's largest, most prestigious meeting room, an opulent space adorned with Thorne's latest, most uninspired acquisitions. The room was tense, thick with the scent of expensive coffee and unspoken doubts. Thorne began his presentation, his voice booming with forced confidence, his carefully rehearsed words attempting to paint a rosy picture of growth and innovation. He projected charts and graphs onto a massive screen, all meticulously doctored to obscure the gallery's true financial stagnation. He spoke of unprecedented opportunities and redefining the artistic landscape, his words hollow in the increasingly skeptical silence. As Thorne reached the crescendo of his self-congratulatory monologue, attempting to introduce his stunning new acquisitions, a sharp, insistent buzz echoed through the room. It wasn't his phone, nor any of the executives. Thorne faltered, visibly annoyed. The large, pristine monitor at the front of the room, typically reserved for his PowerPoint presentations, suddenly flickered. The carefully prepared slide of dull landscapes vanished, replaced by an unexpected, grainy image. It was a live feed from one of the gallery's hidden surveillance cameras. A collective gasp swept through the room, followed by a ripple of confusion. Thorne spun around, his face contorted in a mask of bewildered fury. "What is this? Who did this? Get it off the screen!" he roared, pounding his cane on the marble floor. He tried frantically to access his tablet, to regain control of the display, but the screen remained locked on the live feed. And then, as if on cue, the grainy image on the screen began to change. The feed shifted from a static view to a time-lapse sequence. The room was bathed in an eerie blue glow from the monitor. What appeared next was utterly, breathtakingly impossible. The time-lapse showed Ethan Vance, the gallery's quiet, elderly janitor, moving through the deserted halls in the dead of night. At first, he was simply cleaning, his usual meticulous routine. But then, the ordinary began to transform into the extraordinary. The time-lapse accelerated, showcasing fleeting glimpses of his hidden artistry, the mop as a brush. Ethan's mop, usually a tool for grime, moved with a fluid grace, leaving intricate, ephemeral patterns on the polished floor. Moisture and dust swirled into transient landscapes, abstract forms that hinted at profound depth. The camera captured the subtle dance of light on these temporary canvases, making them shimmer with an otherworldly beauty before they were wiped away. The rag sculptures, discarded cleaning rags, previously seen as mere refuse, were meticulously arranged into intricate symbolic forms. A soaring bird taking flight from a tangled knot of fabric, a weeping eye formed from crumpled linen, a human figure bent in profound contemplation. These ephemeral sculptures appeared and disappeared with astonishing speed, captured only by the relentless eye of the camera. Light and shadow play. Using the ambient security lights and strategically placed reflective surfaces, discarded mirror shards, polished metal buckets, Ethan created dazzling displays of light and shadow, transforming mundane corners into dramatic tableau. The camera caught the ethereal dance of illumination, painting ghostly forms on the walls, giving life to inert objects. Found object art. Broken pieces of pottery from a dropped vase, fallen leaves from the garden, even stray threads from an old tapestry. All were meticulously arranged into stunning symbolic compositions. A single vibrant red rose, nurtured from his own humble apartment, appeared on the floor beneath the reflection of a forgotten portrait, a silent tribute to unrecognized talent. The camera captured the raw beauty he found in discarded, forgotten things. The unveiling of the Celtic knot. Most astonishingly, the time-lapse showed moments where Ethan, lost in his creative process, would unconsciously reveal the Celtic knot scar on his left wrist. In magnified close-ups, the intricate design of the scar was clearly visible, hinting at a profound, unacknowledged heritage. The camera's zoom capabilities, intended to catch thieves, inadvertently highlighted the very symbol of his hidden genius. The board members, initially stunned, were now mesmerized. Their gasps turned to murmurs of awe, then to outright exclamations of disbelief and wonder. Thorne, meanwhile, stood utterly frozen, his face a ghastly shade of green, his eyes wide with a mixture of horror and dawning recognition. He recognized the gallery's walls, the very art he claimed to curate. He recognized the janitor. He saw the glitches he had dismissed, the optical illusions he had rationalized away, unfolding before him as undeniable, breathtaking acts of creation. The camera, intended to be his instrument of control, had become the silent witness to his blindness, his prejudice, his spectacular failure to recognize genius beneath his very nose. The footage continued to play, revealing the depth of Ethan's artistry. It showed him not just creating art, but interacting with the existing pieces, a subtle movement of a mop that drew a line mirroring a stroke in a modern painting, a precise placement of a cleaning bucket that framed a forgotten corner of a classical landscape, turning the entire gallery into his canvas, his studio, his unwitting collaborator. The sequence ended with a breathtaking shot. Ethan, standing silently before one of his ephemeral dust and light creations, a shimmering, fleeting image of a vast, star-filled galaxy swirling on the polished marble floor, the Celtic knot on his wrist pulsing faintly in the dim security light. It was a moment of profound beauty, a raw, undeniable testament to unbridled artistic spirit. A voice, clear and resonant, cut through the stunned silence. It was Ms. Evelyn Reed, the gallery's most influential and respected art critic, a woman known for her sharp intellect and unwavering integrity, who had been an early quiet supporter of the Artisan Collective. She stood up, her eyes still fixed on the screen, tears glinting in them. "Julian," she began, her voice quivering with emotion, "what we are witnessing, this is not glitches. This is revelation. This is a profound living exhibition. This is the Artisan Collective." Her words hit Thorne like a physical blow. His face contorted in a desperate attempt to deny, to deflect. "Nonsense! This is a trick, a digital manipulation. He's just a janitor," he shrieked, his voice cracking, his carefully cultivated facade crumbling completely. He lunged towards the screen as if to tear the truth from its digital frame. But before he could reach it, the doors of the boardroom swung open. Through them streamed a small group of individuals, their faces a mixture of intensity and quiet triumph. They were the anonymous leaders of the Artisan Collective, their identities previously guarded with fanatical secrecy. And at their head, standing with a calm authority that commanded immediate silence, was a young woman, no older than 30, with vibrant, intelligent eyes, who carried herself with a fierce grace. Her name was Lyra, and etched subtly on her own left wrist, almost imperceptibly visible beneath the cuff of her bohemian chic sleeve, was a faint, stylized Celtic knot tattoo, identical in design to Ethan's scar. "No trick, Mr. Thorne," Lyra said, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through his panicked cries. "This is the truth, and he," she gestured towards Ethan, who stood quietly by the side, a serene expression on his face, "is not just a janitor. He is the original founder of the Artisan Collective. He is the master from whom we all learned. He is the hidden artist, the silent genius. And he is your grandfather, Julian." The revelation struck Thorne with the force of a cosmic hammer blow. His eyes, wide with disbelief and horror, snapped from Lyra to Ethan, then back to the screen where the Celtic knot on Ethan's wrist still faintly glowed. His grandfather? The man he had dismissed, ridiculed, and utterly ignored? The man whose daily presence he had despised? The very source of the artistic rebellion he so furiously sought to suppress was his own blood, his own family's forgotten legacy. The truth, exposed by his own surveillance, by the very technology he sought to control, was a public, devastating humiliation. He stumbled backward, collapsing into a chair, his face a mask of utter, speechless devastation, his reign utterly and irrevocably shattered. The gallery, the art world, the very fabric of his reality, had been irrevocably transformed by the quiet, impossible actions of the man he had never truly seen. The vindication for Ethan Vance was absolute, witnessed by an entire world now forced to acknowledge the genius that had quietly swept its floors. The boardroom, moments before a theater for Julian Thorne's final desperate act, now pulsed with a profound, almost sacred silence. The echoes of Lyra's bombshell, "He is your grandfather, Julian," still hung in the air, vibrating with an undeniable truth that shredded Thorne's reality. His face, a ghastly mosaic of disbelief and horror, remained frozen, locked in a tableau of utter devastation. The powerful, almost mystical hum emanating from the Celtic knot scar on Ethan Vance's wrist seemed to intensify, a silent affirmation of his ancient heritage now fully unveiled. It was a beacon of light piercing through decades of shadow, illuminating a lineage of artistry that Julian Thorne, in his blinding arrogance, had utterly failed to perceive, let alone appreciate. The revelation wasn't merely a personal blow to Thorne, it was a seismic shockwave that rippled through the entire art world. The executives, initially stunned into silence, erupted into a cacophony of hushed murmurs, then outright exclamations of shock and wonder. Their initial confusion gave way to a dawning, almost reverent understanding. The dismissed janitor, the liability Thorne had so carelessly derided, was not only a hidden artistic genius, but the progenitor of the Artisan Collective, the very movement that had challenged, and in essence, overthrown Thorne's stale dominion. This was a narrative far richer and more compelling than any acquisition, any market trend. It was a story of forgotten legacy, quiet resilience, and the triumph of authentic talent over commercial pretense. Ms. Evelyn Reed, the venerable art critic, now stood with tears openly streaming down her face, her usual professional reserve completely dissolved by the raw emotion of the moment. Her voice, though still quivering, rang with a newfound conviction. "This is beyond a mere exhibition, Julian," she declared, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces of the board members. "This is an artistic revolution. The Viridia Gallery, under your stewardship, has been a mausoleum, a temple to the dead and the commercialized. But Ethan Vance, your own grandfather, has breathed life back into these halls, transforming the very act of maintenance into the highest form of creative expression. He has shown us that true art is not confined to frames or pedestals. It lives in the human spirit, in the unseen, in the profound act of creation, regardless of recognition." Her words were a stinging indictment, a public excommunication delivered by the very oracle of the art world. She turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with adoration. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice filled with respect, "you are not just an artist. You are a living legend. You are the heart of the artisan collective, the very soul of this movement." The impact of Evelyn Reed's pronouncement was immense. Her endorsement, powerful and unassailable, validated everything that had just unfolded. The other board members, a diverse group of art historians, philanthropists, and influential cultural figures, quickly rallied. One by one, they rose from their seats, some with expressions of profound apology, others with renewed awe. The atmosphere shifted from one of confrontation to one of profound reverence. They looked at Ethan not as a janitor, but as a master, a revelation in their midst. Julian Thorne, meanwhile, remained collapsed in his chair, his face contorted in a mask of utter, speechless devastation. The weight of the public humiliation, the utter shattering of his carefully constructed reality, seemed to crush him. He stumbled backward, his carefully practiced composure utterly gone, his reign utterly and irrevocably shattered. The gallery, the art world, the very fabric of his carefully curated reality, had been irrevocably transformed by the quiet, impossible actions of the man he had never truly seen. His grandfather. The truth, exposed by his own surveillance, by the very technology he sought to control, was a public, devastating humiliation. He was a man utterly broken, reduced to a trembling husk of his former arrogant self. The vindication for Ethan Vance was absolute, witnessed by an entire world now forced to acknowledge the genius that had quietly swept its floors. But for Ethan, this wasn't about revenge. It was about liberation. The long-suppressed weight of his hidden identity, the decades of quiet artistic yearning, had finally been lifted. The faint, steady warmth of the Celtic knot on his wrist resonated with a profound sense of rightness, a quiet fulfillment. He was no longer just a janitor. He was home. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire beyond the boardroom. Art journalists, alerted by the sudden cryptic shift in the gallery's internal feed, swarmed the building. News anchors breathlessly reported on the unfolding drama, their voices filled with incredulity and excitement. The hidden camera footage, initially intended for internal security, was leaked to the press, by whom no one publicly admitted, though the discreet smile on Lyra's face hinted at a strategic hand. The time-lapse videos of Ethan's impossible art went viral, captivating the world. Viewers were mesmerized by the silent janitor transforming dust into galaxies, rags into poignant figures, light into ethereal paintings. The story of his Celtic knot scar, explained by Lyra in an impromptu press conference, became a symbol of a forgotten artistic lineage, an ancient tradition resurrected by the most unassuming of hands. The public reaction was unprecedented. People poured into the streets of Viridia, drawn by the raw authenticity of the story. They gathered outside the gallery, holding signs proclaiming, "Art lives here," and "The janitor is the master." They shared images of Ethan's art, dissecting its layers of meaning, finding profundity in what had been dismissed as mundane. The irony was palpable. The very public Thorne had sought to control with exclusivity now embraced the very essence of inclusion. The immediate consequences for Thorne were severe. The board, influenced by public outrage and Evelyn Reed's powerful endorsement, unanimously voted to remove Julian Thorne from his position as director. His long history of valuing commercial gain over artistic integrity, his dismissive treatment of staff, and now the profound revelation of his familial betrayal, provided ample grounds for his swift and unceremonious ousting. Thorne was not only stripped of his power, but faced significant legal repercussions related to his questionable financial dealings and the suppression of emerging artists. His carefully built empire crumbled, leaving him with nothing but a shattered reputation and the bitter taste of public condemnation. He was no longer a gatekeeper, but a pariah, his name synonymous with artistic hypocrisy. Conversely, the world opened up for Ethan Vance in ways he could never have imagined. Invitations flooded in from renowned galleries, prestigious art schools, and major publications. Art historians clamored to interview him, eager to uncover the secrets of his lost artistic lineage. Critics who had once lauded Thorne's collection now penned glowing, almost apologetic analyses of Ethan's raw genius. The Artisan Collective, no longer operating in the shadows, was thrust into the international spotlight, hailed as the vanguard of a new art movement, their message of accessible, authentic art resonating globally. Ethan, however, remained profoundly unchanged by the sudden glare of fame. The quiet dignity that had defined him as a janitor remained his core. He gently declined most of the grand offers, preferring to work with Lyra and the Artisan Collective. He insisted that his exhibition remain as it had been captured by the hidden cameras, a raw, unedited testament to his work, played on a continuous loop in the very boardroom where Thorne's downfall occurred, a stark reminder of the blindness of privilege. He continued to sweep floors for a few weeks, a symbolic gesture, a quiet protest against the superficiality of the art world. He knew the true value of art lay not in its price tag, but in its ability to connect, to inspire, to reflect the human soul. The Celtic knot on his wrist glowed brighter than ever, no longer a hidden mark of a secret, but a celebrated symbol of his true identity. The profound significance of this moment wasn't lost on anyone. It was a climax that transcended mere corporate drama. It was a vindication of a life lived with quiet integrity, a testament to the power of hidden talent, and a searing indictment of a system that valued surface over soul. Ethan Vance, the unseen janitor, had not merely cleaned the gallery. He had cleansed its very essence, sweeping away its arrogance and illuminating its true purpose. The stage was now set for a new era in the art world, one where the whispers of a Celtic knot and the rhythmic squeak of a janitor's mop would echo louder than any auctioneer's gavel. The boardroom, moments before thick with Julian Thorne's disbelief and the suffocating tension of a crumbling empire, now vibrated with a palpable sense of awe, tinged with a profound, almost reverent silence. Thorne's abrupt public dismissal, punctuated by Lyra's earth-shattering revelation, sent ripples of shock and a strange, cleansing catharsis through the gathered executives. They watched, stunned, as he was escorted out by a silent, efficient security team, his face a mask of utter devastation, his arrogance stripped bare, leaving behind only the hollow shell of a man undone. The whispers of the Artisan Collective transformed from a distant underground threat into a vivid, undeniable reality, embodied by the quiet man now standing with serene dignity at the head of the polished obsidian table. Ethan Vance, the dismissed liability, the invisible janitor, had orchestrated a masterpiece of strategic unveiling, a testament to his intelligence, his unwavering resolve, and the profound, enduring power of authentic art. His journey, once overshadowed by hardship and systemic dismissal, now blazed with the undeniable light of vindication, illuminating a path for a new era in the art world. The aftermath of this extraordinary revelation was swift and decisive, its impact reverberating far beyond the hallowed halls of the Viridia Gallery. News of the dramatic boardroom confrontation, spearheaded by an anonymous janitor turned artistic master and orchestrated with the precision of a finely tuned symphony, swept through the global art world like wildfire. Headlines screamed of Julian Thorne's spectacular downfall, detailing his ruthless business practices, his dismissive treatment of staff, and the stark poetic irony of his public humiliation by the very man he'd so carelessly cast aside. The subsequent investigations, fueled by the torrent of public outrage and the meticulous evidence uncovered by the Artisan Collective's clandestine operations, revealed a damning pattern of unethical leadership, employee exploitation, and short-sighted decisions that prioritized personal gain and superficial grandeur over genuine artistic integrity and long-term cultural value. His empire, built on a foundation of arrogance, commercialism, and a profound disrespect for the true spirit of art, crumbled under the irrefutable weight of undeniable truth. Julian Thorne faced not only unprecedented public humiliation, but also a barrage of significant legal challenges related to his questionable financial dealings, the systematic suppression of emerging artists who threatened his commercial interests, and various breaches of ethical conduct. He would spend his foreseeable future navigating the labyrinthine complexities of courtrooms and legal battles, a stark, agonizing contrast to the opulent boardrooms he once commanded. He was stripped of everything: his reputation, his wealth, his influence, leaving him a pariah in the very circles that once revered him. For Ethan Vance, the initial shock of public revelation gradually settled into a profound, almost overwhelming sense of purpose. The media frenzy, though intense, eventually subsided, leaving behind a quiet, burgeoning peace that resonated deeply within him. He was unequivocally recognized, globally, as the driving force behind the Artisan Collective, his true identity as the hidden master, unveiled not just to the corporate art world, but to a nation, and indeed, the world, that had once overlooked and dismissed him. His unique, ephemeral art, captured by Thorne's own surveillance cameras, captivated millions, sparking a global conversation about the nature of art, authenticity, and the true meaning of value. His immense wealth, stemming not from the gallery's profits, but from his own quiet, astute investments, and the significant philanthropic contributions that poured in for the Artisan Collective, was now his to command. He could have retreated into a life of quiet luxury, a well-deserved respite after decades of unseen labor and suppressed genius. But years of living with the silent thrum of his Celtic knot scar, years of observing the profound beauty in the mundane, had instilled in him a deeper calling. His resources were not for personal indulgence. They were for a far more meaningful mission: to redefine the very landscape of art, to democratize its appreciation, and to champion the unseen talents of the world. His first act as the de facto, universally acknowledged leader of the new Viridia Gallery, though he adamantly refused any formal title, was to immediately reverse all of Julian Thorne's previous staff dismissals, ensuring that every employee unjustly fired or marginalized by Thorne's oppressive policies was either reinstated with full back pay or generously compensated. He personally oversaw the creation of a comprehensive support system for aspiring artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, offering mentorship programs, specialized workshops, and guaranteed exhibition opportunities within the very walls that once would have scorned them. It was a symbolic victory, a powerful, unequivocal statement that resonated deeply within the art community and beyond, signaling a complete paradigm shift. He then channeled a significant portion of the gallery's redirected funds, along with his substantial personal wealth and the massive influx of donations to the Artisan Collective, into an ambitious new venture: the Vance Institute for Found Art and Creative Expression. This initiative dramatically transformed the sleek corporate offices and sterile exhibition spaces of the Viridia Gallery. While a section remained dedicated to traditional, ethically acquired art, entire floors were repurposed. He established state-of-the-art open studios for underserved communities, providing free access to materials, equipment, and expert guidance in various artistic mediums. He created vibrant, interactive creative expression labs for at-risk youth, offering therapeutic art programs that nurtured self-discovery and emotional healing through creative outlets. He personally oversaw every detail, from adaptable workspaces for disabled artists to comfortable, collaborative communal spaces where ideas could flow freely, ensuring every corner resonated with inclusivity, a stark contrast to the company's former atmosphere of exclusive elitism. He championed projects focused on developing art for social good, community murals celebrating diversity, interactive installations promoting environmental awareness, and public performances that fostered dialogue and understanding. Its success was widely documented, serving as a blueprint for similar initiatives nationwide, revitalizing urban spaces and igniting creative sparks in countless lives. Beyond the Vance Institute, Ethan recognized the profound impact of unseen prejudice and the commercialization of art. He leveraged his newfound influence and the immense goodwill surrounding him to establish the Celtic Knot Foundation, a global nonprofit dedicated to advocating for authentic artistic expression, promoting inclusivity in cultural institutions, and supporting marginalized artists worldwide. His vision was clear: to empower individuals, regardless of their background, formal training, or perceived limitations, to express their unique artistic voice, to challenge systemic biases that stifled creativity, and to create a world where raw talent and genuine human connection were valued above all else. He personally spearheaded programs to bring art supplies and mentorship into impoverished neighborhoods, proving that a studio could be found anywhere, in any home, with any found material. He also initiated a vast international program to research, document, and revitalize thousands of lost or suppressed artistic traditions and techniques from indigenous cultures and marginalized communities throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again. He worked tirelessly to establish access to creative expression as a fundamental human right, not a luxury. Weeks later, a quiet, almost serene afternoon found Ethan sitting with Lyra, the brilliant young leader of the Artisan Collective, now his artistic protege and the Institute's new director of programs, and Ms. Evelyn Reed, the venerable art critic who had become his most ardent champion. Sunlight streamed through the large window of what was now his personal studio, a formerly unused, dust-filled storage room Thorne had deemed unfit for anything. It was now a vibrant, uncluttered space, filled with the scent of fresh paint and wood, its walls adorned not with framed masterpieces, but with the raw, evocative sketches Ethan had made in secret, pinned casually, yet profoundly, to corkboards. The entire building hummed with the joyful sounds of students in a new ceramics class downstairs, their laughter echoing through the renovated halls, the quiet murmur of conversations in the communal cafe, and the focused hum of artists at work in the open-plan studios. It was a stark, comforting contrast to the cold, imposing silence and sterile atmosphere it once held under Julian Thorne's tyrannical gaze. Evelyn Reed, now a celebrated Pulitzer-winning art critic for her fearless role in exposing Thorne's corporate malfeasance and championing Ethan's genius, leaned back in her chair, a contented sigh escaping her. She had written extensively about Ethan's true history, bringing his lost artistic contributions and the profound philosophy of the Artisan Collective to global light. "It's incredible, Ethan," she said, gesturing around the vibrant space, her voice tinged with genuine awe. "From an unseen janitor to the spiritual leader of an entire artistic movement, you've not only reclaimed your legacy, but you've transformed an entire institution. You've achieved something truly extraordinary. You've shown that true art isn't just about what's on the canvas, but the heart and history behind it, the hands that create it, and the spirit it ignites." Ethan, now dressed in comfortable, paint-splattered work clothes that reflected his inner serenity rather than ostentation, looked at the small, faint scar on his left wrist. It was no longer a hidden mark of shame or trauma. It now seemed to glow faintly, almost imperceptibly, under the warm afternoon light, a constant reminder of his journey. Lyra, without his knowing, had taken a discreet photograph of it during one of their initial meetings, incorporating its unique shape into the new Vance Institute logo, a subtle artistic rendering of the Celtic knot intertwined with a paintbrush, symbolizing both his personal history and the creative sustenance his foundation now provided. This symbol, once a secret, was now proudly displayed on the Institute's grand entrance, a powerful emblem of accessibility and authentic artistry. "It was my compass, wasn't it?" he mused, tracing the faint lines of the scar with his thumb, feeling its smooth, familiar contours. "It reminded me who I was, even when I had forgotten. It reminded me of the promises I made to myself, to my ancestors, to never let the past define me, but to let it fuel me. And it held the truth." He looked at Lyra, a silent acknowledgement of her unwavering belief in him, and then at Evelyn, for her unwavering support and partnership in exposing the truth. "It reminded me that even when I had nothing else, I still had my truth, my art, and the belief that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path, even in the deepest darkness. And that, my friends," he added, his eyes shining with a profound gratitude that radiated from within, "that was everything. His journey, once marked by profound suffering and invisibility, was now illuminated by an unwavering purpose, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, the relentless pursuit of justice, and the transformative magic of art itself. The whispers of the past no longer haunted him. They guided him, reminding him that even the smallest spark of creativity could ignite a revolution, and that true legacy was built not on wealth or fame, but on genuine human connection and shared passion. The rhythmic squeak of a mop was no longer a symbol of anonymity for Ethan Vance. Now in his early 70s, his frame was no longer simply functional, but carried an undeniable grace, his spirit vibrant, his eyes alight with a profound sense of peace and purpose. The Viridia Gallery of Fine Arts, once a monument to elitism, had become a thriving testament to his enduring compassion and the transformative power of art. The Vance Institute for Found Art and Creative Expression, which he had painstakingly brought to life from the ashes of Julian Thorne's rigid conventions, had flourished beyond his wildest dreams. It was no longer a nascent project, but a national model, with vibrant branches in 5 major cities across the country, providing comprehensive support to thousands of formerly marginalized individuals and families, and serving as dynamic cultural hubs. Each Vance Institute Center was a testament to his vision. Free open studios humming with newfound creativity, digital art labs teaching cutting-edge techniques, and dedicated therapeutic art programs for at-risk youth, offering solace and self-expression through the profound joy of creation. Ethan, though no longer directly managing the daily operations of the Vance Institute, remained its guiding spirit. He was a beloved fixture, often seen walking through the communal spaces, his presence a quiet anchor for those still navigating their own artistic paths. He would sit with young students in the new ceramic studios, his hands gently guiding them through the delicate process of shaping clay, sharing stories of his own struggles and triumphs. His words were always gentle, always encouraging, carrying the weight of lived experience and the light of hard-won hope. He often led informal workshops on using unconventional materials, demonstrating how profound beauty and meaning could be found and created anywhere, with any discarded object. His impossible works, once secret performances for a hidden camera, had found a new, legitimate home, celebrated for their raw honesty and evocative power within the very walls that once would have scorned them. His life, once defined by loss and isolation, was now overflowing with purpose, camaraderie, and the profound satisfaction of truly making a difference. He was honored as a hero, not just for his tenacity in seeking justice, but for his enduring compassion and his unwavering commitment to lifting others. Ethan dedicated a significant portion of his time to ensuring that no other deserving artist would suffer his fate. He became a passionate advocate for accessible art education and ethical cultural governance on a national level. His voice, once a whisper, now clear and resonant as he advised congressional committees on equitable access to artistic resources and inclusive cultural policies. He didn't just speak, he acted. Collaborating closely with Lyra, his steadfast artistic protege and the new director of programs at the Vance Institute, and Ms. Evelyn Reed, his unwavering champion, who had since won a Pulitzer for her investigative journalism that exposed Julian Thorne, Ethan co-authored a memoir titled The Silent Canvas, A Janitor's Journey to Artistic Revelation. The book, a raw and poignant account of his life, from his forgotten artistic lineage to his years of invisibility and ultimate reclamation, became an unexpected bestseller. It resonated deeply with readers across the nation, inspiring widespread empathy for unrecognized talents and driving significant, tangible policy changes within government funding allocations for community art programs, especially those focusing on unconventional art and vocational training. Crucially, a significant portion of the book's proceeds went directly back to the Vance Institute and the Celtic Knot Foundation, ensuring their long-term sustainability and continued expansion. The Celtic Knot Foundation had also soared, establishing innovative art therapy centers and vibrant creative incubators in underserved communities globally. Ethan personally led workshops, teaching young people, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, how to express themselves through various artistic mediums, how to critically analyze commercial art systems, and how to use creative skills as tools for social good. He believed that artistic expression, combined with cultural literacy, was the key to unlocking future potential. He provided grants for unconventional art ventures, ensuring that initiatives like street art murals, pop-up galleries, and found object installations received the recognition and funding they deserved, challenging the narrow, commercially driven definitions that Thorne had once enforced. He also established the Thorne's Legacy Scholarship, an irony not lost on him, fully funding higher education for bright, ambitious students from impoverished families who demonstrated genuine artistic talent, ensuring that creativity, unlike his own past, was never suppressed by circumstance. The scholarship's motto, etched subtly on each recipient's certificate, was, "From obscurity, art takes flight," a direct nod to his own arduous journey and the symbolic Celtic knot scar that had guided him. He also initiated a vast international program to restore and digitize thousands of lost or suppressed artistic traditions and techniques from indigenous cultures and marginalized communities throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again. He worked tirelessly to establish access to art as a fundamental human right, not a luxury. The story culminates on a warm, golden afternoon in the sun-drenched central courtyard of the flagship Vance Institute campus in Viridia. The courtyard, meticulously tended by students and volunteers, was a vibrant oasis of calm, alive with the gentle splash of a newly installed fountain sculpted by students from recycled materials, the soft murmur of conversations from a communal cafe, and the distant, joyful sounds of children engaged in an outdoor painting class, their canvases splashed with exuberant colors. Ethan sat on a rustic wooden bench, custom-built by the Institute's vocational woodworking program. The bench's design subtly incorporated elements of the Celtic knot from his scar, its intricate curves carved into the polished wood. He was surrounded by a small group of young artists from the Celtic Knot Foundation's mentorship program. They listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of respect and quiet hope, as he shared a story not of grand victories, but of small acts of kindness that had kept his spirit alive during his darkest days. He emphasized the importance of resilience, of finding inspiration in unexpected places, and of using one's unique voice to create change. These young individuals, once facing uncertain futures, were now empowered and thriving, their eyes holding the promise of new beginnings, a testament to the Institute's transformative power. In his hand, Ethan held a small, beautifully polished silver Celtic knot charm, custom-made to precisely match the shape and size of his scar. Its surface, gleaming under the afternoon sun, reflected the vibrant hues of the courtyard and the bright, hopeful faces of the children. The intricate details of the miniature Celtic knot, once a painful reminder, now shone with renewed brilliance, a testament to his enduring legacy. He turned the charm slowly in his palm, feeling its smooth, familiar contours. The faint, warm hum that had always accompanied his scar seemed stronger now, a comforting presence. The symbol of the Celtic knot, once a private mark, was now incorporated into the Vance Institute's official logo, subtly etched onto the entrance sign, its interwoven lines symbolizing connection, continuity, and endless creativity, embodying the upliftment the center provided. He looked up, his eyes once weary and shadowed, now reflecting a deep, serene joy and an unbreakable spirit, as he watched a group of children from the Institute playfully release a flock of colorful, hand-painted kites into the clear blue sky from the rooftop garden. The kites, each a unique design, soared once, twice, then danced off towards the horizon, a powerful gesture symbolizing hope, freedom, and the boundless potential of the human imagination for all. The old janitor, once forgotten, had not only unveiled a profound artistic secret that changed everything, but had become the architect of a new, more compassionate world, where true art truly belonged to everyone. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining our journey.